That's not a comic book. Now that's a comic book.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Trade Talk. This week I'm going over Magneto, Volume 1, Infamous. This is the first volume of Cullen Bunn's Magneto series. Yeah, it was a full series with 4 volumes, might as well call it. That was going on in 2014, 2015. And it's really good. It's a really strong take on Magneto. Does some nice violent ass shit with Magneto, and also is smart to, play with the idea of how depowered he is currently in continuity, at this point at least, and do some effective commentary and stuff with that. So the basic premise of this book is that Magneto is going around the country or the world and seeking out people who have committed crimes against mutants and brutally murdering them. And boy, is that appealing. That's just, it's not a take over the world scheme. It's not like some huge, plot with the X-Men all involved. It's just Magneto going around doing some good old-fashioned brutal murder of Homo sapiens. And that's enjoyable. So page 1 of this, we get this store clerk talking about what happened to this guy that was sitting in the cafe, and he says, and then he pulled out all the fillings of the doc's mouth with a snap of his fingers. The screams. Nobody should ever hear screams like that. That wasn't the worst of it, though, because after he threw the doc into the street, he replaced the fillings. Oh, fucking Christ. Wow, what a way to open a book. So it's so violent. It is insanely violent. And that's really appealing. But yeah, Magneto is just kind of going around. It's a little bit of the spy thrillery because he's trying to stay under the radar, and keep himself off of Shield's notice, or avoid Shield's detection. He's got a team devoted to him, and he's just going around trying to, punish the shit out of people. Here's about a guy who killed 4 mutants, turned himself in. So he goes to the jail, surprises a bunch of police officers. If he doesn't kill, he hurts the shit out of everybody in the jail. Goes to kill the guy in the prison. Turns out the guy's actually a Sentinel. And then Magneto gets on the trail of some humans that have had Sentinel parts put into them against their will. And so that's what the rest of the book's about, is Magneto just going around trying to find the source of this. You get a neat flashback to when he was a boy, and they were trying to steal some bread and get back into the Jewish ghetto. And then that didn't work out for them, because one of their friends got caught by the Gestapo, and a officer said, "All right, tell us who you were stealing with, and we'll let you go home with what's left of the food you got, and we'll just get them." And so the kid says one of his friends' names, and then is shot in the head anyway. And Magneto is capturing some of these guys who've been kidnapping the homeless and turning them into sentinels. Leaves one alive. And talks to him. He's like, the people you recruit, where do you take them? Tell me and you'll walk out of here. Lessons about desperation and ruthlessness. He tells me everything he knows. He answers my every question. Tells me exactly where to find those responsible. He wants to believe I'll spare him. Perhaps part of me wants to believe it too. But bad times teach you lessons. And they eat you alive. Just as hopelessness can crush your spirit and turn you into a monster. Blam. Shoots the guy anyway. So that's the really interesting thing about Magneto. Is he didn't come out of the Holocaust thinking that, like, this can never happen again and we must unite people all over the world so that nothing like this can ever happen again. Came out of the Holocaust and said this is going to happen again. And I'm going to use the tactics of my enemies to try to make sure it doesn't. And that's fucking cold as shit. And sympathetic isn't the right word. But you can see where he's coming from. I like to think about the kinds of experiences that people have and how those experiences shape their worldview. Because I feel we've all gone through the process of hearing some kind of statistic or something that takes something you believe and scientifically proves that while that may be a problem, it is not a significant issue, and what you're doing in reaction to it will not solve the problem. I think everyone's had something like that. And they've and I feel like part of the challenge is to address that incongruity between your experiences and the way things are in the world. Not saying that your experience is not valid, but to comprehend that your experience is not universal. Your experience is not the way it should be. I like to think about how people go through that and thus have to contend with doing with that. And how some people can't. How some people can only take their experience and instead of acknowledge its uniqueness, take it as universal and enforce it as universal, if that makes sense. I like that Magneto's a character who, on some level, wants Charles Xavier's view of the world, of the pacifist neoliberal view of the world, to function and work. He honestly wants it. But he is so trapped in the harshness of reality that he experienced that he honestly cannot believe it will ever work, and so is willing to do anything by any means necessary to try to fight for a world that is more beneficial to him and his kind. And I really, really find that interesting, and I think this book plays with that a lot. So that's about, like, maybe a third of the way into the book. Then the rest of it's basically just him breaking into this facility where they're building sentinels and putting them inside people's bodies. And he's going to destroy this facility. But, like, he talks about, since he's lost some of the scale of his powers, in the past he would have just lifted it all up and thrown it into space, but now he can't do that. So he has to infiltrate it more secretly and stuff, and that's kind of interesting. And I kind of like the way that things go for him after he's gotten into this, where he's kidnapped or I don't know, taken one of the scientists in charge of the facility and the Sentinel programming. And he's having her blow up the thing, and she explains that they're not building Sentinels because they want to wipe out the mutants. She kind of comprehends that the mutants, or she's of the belief, and the people in this facility are of the belief, that mutants will be the dominant species on the planet. And so instead of trying to wipe them out, they just want to be able to reserve some place for themselves, for normal humans, and have Sentinels there as security. That's really interesting. We knew we could create Guardians to defend us if mutants tried to ruin what we built, but the Sentinels are meant only for our protection. We don't want to attack mutants. Places such as this have procedures, protocols to enact should anything go terribly wrong. Things have gone terribly wrong, Doctor. So get to work. This is a refuge for humans, a place where we can live in peace, where we couldn't harm mutants and they couldn't harm us. Is that so terrible? And as she's thinking, says that, Magneto goes straight to thinking about Genosha and how it was destroyed, because that's exactly what he was trying to do. I won't do this. We've made mistakes. I recognize that, but you can't force me to demolish everything. You don't understand how much and he just brutally murders her by moving a paperclip through her veins straight into her fucking brain. I've heard enough, Doctor. Enough. He just blows the place up. Walks the fuck out. Once I could have reduced this structure to rubble with a wave of my hand and a bit of concentration. Now it took a few strokes of a keyboard. So yeah, that's the majority of the book. That's probably the first half. The next half sees him bumming around a small town, trying to figure out what he's going to do next. And, he's kind of like going around saving some mutant kids who are being sent to be cured or whatever. Goes and, just floating around doing a lot of like small little side missions like that. Takes out some of the priests or whatever they call themselves. There's another bit where he remembers an attack on mutants that happened by a group of clone mutants. And so he's then gets put on a mission or turned on to a mission to deal with them and try to take them over from Mr. Sinister, who uses them. And that's all well and interesting, and it's definitely got some stuff to it, but by far the most interesting stuff is that first half. It does definitely make me want to read more. I was looking online trying to find other volumes, and if I can get the other 3 volumes of this cheaply, I definitely will, and continue talking about it, because this is pretty good. Fucking love this cover. That's fantastic. So anyways, he instead of like just killing these clones, because what these mutants do is is they're cloned, they're sent out on missions, and then when they die on those missions, they're reborn. So instead of just killing them, Magneto kills them and takes control of the bio software, blah blah blah, jargon science that creates the new ones, so that the new ones will be subservient to him. Okay, this cover. There are a lot of gag covers in this series. Cover gallery, please, for the love of God. This is ruining the mood. Like, there's that one. There's another one where it's a mouse, of all things. And, like, it's cute. It's fun. I laughed, but I'm so not in the mood to laugh reading this fucking brutal-ass book. Deadpool cover, too. Like, I don't mind doing stuff like that, and I like that they're including the variants in the trade, just not in that way, please. If you can put the variants, please put them in the back where they're not distracting from the tone of the story. Like, they do it for a bunch of the variants, but not all of them, and I don't know why. Whatever. Yeah, really good series. Definitely planning to pick up more of it if I can find it. I hate buying comics online. I got this at a half-price books, and it's in really good condition, which is rare, so yeah. Anyway, gonna see if I can find more copies or more volumes of this run. Cullen Bunn has not been a writer I've been a fan of. I read his Sinestro and a bit of his Venom with Flash Thompson, and he never really did it for me. This is the first time Cullen Bunn's really hit something out of the park for me, so that's exciting. He knows how to write Magneto. Alright, everyone. I think that'll do it for this episode of Trade Talk. Thanks very much for watching. Till next time. Bye.
That's not a comic book. Now that's a comic book.